My name is Josh Miller. I own Riverstone Kennels, and I've been training gun dogs for more than 16 years. I have field trialed, I've hunt tested, but at the end of the day, I'm a duck hunter. You might find that the duck in our Duck Dogs podcast is spelled uniquely. The UK stands for my British Labs. I love my British Labs. I love what they offer me, both as a part of my family and the high motor in the field. As you're going to find, I have some pretty special dogs. Follow along in our podcast series here as we talk about both in the field hunting and in the field training situations that will hopefully help you progress with your dog at home. Thank you once again to DUK. DUK Premium Performance Sport 3020 is the food that I feed my personal dogs, and highly recommend that food. We have seen such tremendous transformations between coat and energy level and recovery, and I think more and more things that we're identifying as we continue to feed this food. So DUK Premium Performance Sport 3020, go check it out. Also, thank you to Sitka Gear. If you have not checked out Sitka Gear and you do anything outdoors, you really need to, because this clothing, these systems has changed the way that I hunt, has changed the way that I train, and I guess I never even realized how much being comfortable is possible, when you're out in the elements. And so sitkagear.com, you can go find them and everything that they have to offer. So I'm kind of excited about this week because I had a topic that I wanted to talk about, and so I was already excited about it. But we had Whitney and I, had a conference call with DUK yesterday, kind of going over some projects and things that we have going on, and I got even more excited about talking about this topic because as we were on the call, DUK, one of the employees at DUK kind of proposed the exact question that I'm going to talk about here today. And I just thought it was so neat that it came up, and so maybe other people are thinking about it, but it's something that I'm passionate about. So what I want to talk about today, and what I want you to think about, because as we head into this training season, a lot of you have probably already started. I think thinking about this question will likely give you maybe some more sense of purpose, and maybe a little clearer direction, and maybe a little different mindset as you kind of go through these progressions with the training. And that question is, what is it that makes the bond with our gun dogs so special and unique? And as I ask this question, what I mean by that is that let's be real. Let's look at the grand scheme of things. Us gun dog owners, as far as pet owners go, are a big minority. The majority, as we've talked about in the past, the past episodes, the majority of pet owners out there are just that. They're pet owners. They have, whether it's non-sporting breeds, even if they have sporting breeds, they don't necessarily hunt or do anything active, athletic, with those dogs. They're family members, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for those of us that have high aspirations for our dogs, for those of us that really push our dogs to these certain levels and heights, there's something different. And if you've been around the dog world at all, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a difference in the pride that we have with our gun dogs. There's a difference in the relationship that we have with our gun dogs. And I really think that this comes down to one thing. It's adversity. Think about the adversity that you have been faced with and had to overcome as a team with your dog. Now, if you have a young dog, this may be a little bit of a tough question to answer. But if you have any bit of an older dog at all, I think that you can identify different areas along the way that you were faced with adversity and you had to overcome it together. We live in a world that I call it has the Amazon effect, right? And there's nothing against Amazon, but we've all been trained that we can have essentially anything that we want and we can have it, the next day. And that doesn't happen specifically with training, right? These dogs are just like kids. It takes time. It takes repetition. It takes follow through. And that's why you guys have heard me say it. You'll hear me, continue to say that I always encourage you guys to fall in love with the process, not with the result, because it's a never ending process. But as we really look at adversity and what that means to us as gun dog owners, I think that's the one thing that across the board separates us, and I think adds to the pride that we have with our dogs. Because we have a lot of friends of ours don't necessarily hunt, they don't necessarily have gun dogs, but they have dogs. But they're not facing adversity with them, right? I mean, if the dog is an at-home dog, what kind of adversity do you really have? Outside of maybe potty training, something like that, but they're not, faced with the challenge of, hey, how do I get this dog to run a, 200, 300-yard blind retrieve? How do I gain that trust, right? How do I overcome this hurdle when there's an obvious communication barrier going on between me and the dog? And I have to get over it because, my aspirations and goals, need this, this step in the process. It's a very unique thing when we look at it, as a whole. And I think what's neat about this is that if you take your gun dog and fast forward all the way through, and what I love about our gun dogs is that every person is the same way. We just had a puppy dropped off today at the kennel for training. This puppy's 5 months old, and the guy's ecstatic about this puppy, right? She's so smart. She's gonna be an all-star. She's the best dog ever. Well, we don't know that right now, right? I love that you love it. I love that you're pumped up about it. I love that you're enthusiastic about it, right? But we don't know. She may not have a high ceiling. She might, but she might not. But you don't get that. You don't get excited like that about a family pet or just an at-home dog. The adversity that we overcome together, I think, gives us the pride that we take in these dogs. It gives us that extra bond. It gives us that extra trust. And as a result, I think that's what pushes us. And as we talk about the bond, I think that's what really brings that bond to that next level. It's really unique. It's really a neat thing. And I think it's something that we don't talk enough about. Because let's be real. If you have a dog and they went through everything perfectly, and none of them do, especially if you're pushing to high levels, none of them do. But if they did, you probably wouldn't have as much pride, right? You probably wouldn't have, as much, kind of looking back on, I did that, right? I guess that's pride, right? That's still pride, but the sense of accomplishment. If it was easy, everybody would do it. If it was easy, it probably wouldn't be something that you are so obsessed about, that you push for, that you look forward to doing every day. Now, don't get me wrong. We have all had those moments, and if you're there saying, I've never had one of those moments, I'm going to, kind of wink at you and say, are we lying? We've all had those moments that we are pulling our hair out going, my goodness, why is this not working? I'm so frustrated, and you want to throw in the towel. I can look at that with a number of dogs that I've worked with that it feels like you're just hitting your head against the wall, right? But when you come out the other side and you finally find the combination to that safe, if you will, and you watch it click, in between that dog's ears, and you see him perk up, and you see him basically say, oh, I get it. All that frustration and all that work and all that pent-up energy, all of a sudden, you feel it leave your body, and it changes into that sense of accomplishment. This is what is unique about gun dogs. And I truly believe with all of my heart that because of this, because of the adversity that we face, we also become better people. I can look back on a number of dogs that I've personally have worked with that I know for a fact that they have made me a better person. Pretty incredible. There's not a lot of animals, or not a lot of animal relationships, rather, that you can have that you can really say that. It's very unique. But adversity, it's something that I think a lot of us are scared of. Yeah, I know that whenever we have struggles with dogs at the kennel, I'll make a phone call, as I normally like to do. Anytime a dog is struggling, I like to make a phone call because emails, text messages, they're just up for interpretation, right? So how are you reading them? What mood were you in when you were reading them? There's a lot that goes into it. And so I always like to deliver those messages over the phone. And it's incredible how often people get so nervous and so scared and so not really upset, but you can just tell the tension when something's not going right. It's just one of those things that we deal with. But, from my standpoint, it's like, hey, this is going to happen. We're not dealing with a stationary object. We're not dealing with a piece of wood. We're not dealing with a car. We're not building a house. Right? Like, there's a lot of variables here we're working with, and you are too at home if you're working with your dog. Sometimes we need to kind of take that step back and say, hey, let's put ourselves in their shoes. What's going on here? But it's because of that thought process that I think, again, we just take so much pride in our dogs, and the relationship with our dogs are elevated to a different point than most other dog owners, or pet owners for that matter. Pretty cool stuff. I would like to thank Lucky Duck. If you've not checked out the Lucky Duck kennel, go ahead and do so, because it is an awesome, awesome kennel. We have a number of clients that are using them, nothing but stellar feedback. 5-star crash test rated, and it's light enough to be able to pick up, move around. Awesome all-around crate. So go check them out at luckyduck.com. Also, thank you to gundogsupply.com for any training or hunting needs. I would highly suggest you go check out gundogsupply.com. They are one of the very few one-stop shops that those of us that have dog and dog owners and hunters can go to for all of our training and hunting needs for our four-legged companions. So www.gundogsupply.com. So on our page, the Riverstone Kennels page, I posed a question here this last week, and the amount of feedback was incredible. I guess I really didn't know or understand how many people are following along here on the podcast, and I love that. And definitely encourages me and pushes me to continue to do these. Sometimes it's difficult to carve out the time in a week to sit down and do one of these, but I love it. Thank you all for your feedback. And man, there were so many good answers. The question was, does anyone have any ideas or topics that they want to hear talked about on the podcast? And I was actually kind of blown away, not only with the number of responses, but with how good the responses were. And here's what I love about this. So, a lot of you probably know this, but if you don't, I do a lot of speaking engagements, at least pre-COVID. I'm assuming we're going to get back to that here, getting back to the shows and all this stuff, or at least I hope we do here shortly. But I do a lot of speaking engagements and shows where I will travel quite a bit. I think in 1 year I did Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Tennessee, Texas, California, Colorado, and I'm sure I'm missing some all in 1 year. And so it's really neat, and I love being able to go and do these speaking engagements. It's something I enjoy. I love connecting with people. But you just never know the level of the audience that you're talking to, So I speak, if I speak at a general sports show, I might get a question that is similar to like, how do I get my dog to consistently sit? Right? Okay. Well, I go to like a DU Expo or Pheasant Fest, like I speak at Pheasant Fest, or Game Fair in Minnesota. If you guys have not been to Game Fair, you got to go to Game Fair. It's like a state fair for outdoorsmen. People bring their dogs, kind of a cool deal. But when I speak at those types of shows, I get more of the questions of, can we talk about, remote sitting at a distance and why I'm having inconsistencies, or I'm stuck on, this step of force fetch. Can you help me through? Like very detailed, very, you can tell the people are very knowledgeable. And that's more of what I got here, which was cool because I can tell the audience, and can tell that you guys are into this, right? Like this is something you're passionate about. This is something you want to continue to excel on. And it also does kind of put my mind in a different avenue going, hey, this is the audience that I'm talking to. So again, really appreciate all that feedback. So I'm going to kind of continue to filter through some of these throughout the coming weeks. I'll kind of try to have this kind of a layout where, I always want to have a meat of something that I talk about, but then I'll hit some of these questions, especially some of these really good ones. And so there were so many to go through. I just kind of picked two to start with here. And the first one comes from Larry Flores, and Larry asks, what can I expect when first getting into the hunt testing world? And I think this is really a neat thing because oftentimes when you're new into the testing world, it can be intimidating. You show up in an event, everybody kind of has, there's, it seems like from the second you start, everything's 100 miles an hour, right? Because they've got so much to get through in a short period of time. There's a lot of people. There's different, sites. There's different flights. There's just a lot going on, and it can be intimidating and overwhelming. And so for hunt tests, we've run HRC and AKC, and enjoy them both for different reasons. I would say that HRC has been incredibly inviting to my clients, and oftentimes my clients are just this. They're new to this, and so they don't really know what to expect. They don't really know what to watch, and although I try to be as accommodating to that as possible, it's hard for me. I usually have a trailer full of anywhere from 12 to 20 dogs, and we're running all over the place. And most of the time, I'm getting text messages saying, "Hey, they're waiting for you to get here. Well, I've still got 3 dogs to run here before I can get there." It can get very chaotic. And what has been so fun for me about that, about the HRC side of things, is that oftentimes I look back and finally can kind of shake the cobwebs out of my eyes from going 100 miles an hour. And I look, and there are my clients in with a group of people, laughing, making friends, and those people are kind of telling them, "Hey, this is what your dog did really well. It was fun to see him do this, and yes, I think he got the pass." Really cool. It's very family feel, right? And I'm very proud to say that I think some of my very good friends and very close colleagues come from this, and we all have this very like-minded thought process. We all have obviously a very common what am I trying to say? Activity that we all enjoy, right? I mean, there's the interests or common interests. Good grief, one of those days I just can't talk or think apparently. So I think some of that is really neat. I think I think that's one thing, especially from an HRC perspective, to expect. But there's something else that I think as you go into this testing world, as you call it, which I think is a great way to put it. I think there's oftentimes a little bit of a shock factor on two levels. One is if you think that let's just talk HRC here, which goes started, seasoned, finished. If you think your dog is a seasoned level dog, you may get there and be like, "Oh my gosh, like I didn't think about this, or I didn't work on that," right? And realize all the work that you have to do. And so, there's, I think, that oftentimes. But I also think that there's a little bit of a shock factor on how many great dogs there are out there. And there are a lot of really, really nice dogs out there. And oftentimes you just don't get the opportunity to see dogs on a large scale, on a large spectrum, and get a kind of a big sample size as far as comparing goes. And so from a strictly educational standpoint, I think it's really cool to be able to step back and watch all these dogs run. Boy, that dog had great composure. This dog had a great motor. This dog was super, under control. This dog was a great marker, whatever it is. You can really kind of sit back and appreciate these dogs, especially at those high levels. You start talking master level and finish level dogs. It is fun to watch. And if you've never done it before, I would highly encourage you go find a test that is going to be near you and just take a day and go. It's really, really neat to watch dogs run and compete at that level. And I also think that there's a lot of things that you find out that you need to train for. And what I love about testing, probably more than anything else, because I love the camaraderie, I love the family feel, I love a lot of things that go into it. But I think what it does is it keeps you as the trainer at home. It keeps you with a carrot out in front of your nose saying, this is what I need to reach. This is what I need to achieve. This is what I need to work on. Because it's way too easy to fall in the trap of just going out and going through the motions, like I call it. You're going quote unquote training, but you're throwing the same marks that you have for the last week in a row. You're throwing the same distance. You're doing the same exact thing. You're just going out training just to basically say that you're training. But when you have a goal and objective you're looking for, like you're going to train with a purpose. You're going to train and say, hey, I need to get to this level by this time. And it just really, it's a great motivator. And so I love that part of it. So Larry, if you're new to getting into, the hunt testing, first off, good for you, because I think it's an awesome way, to elevate your game. But I would really encourage you to connect with people, because there are just so many great people that are involved in that again have the like interest and like personalities oftentimes. It's a fun group. And so it's something I would highly encourage you to do. So the last one I want to hit here is from Rocky, Rock Show 801. And I thought this was a really unique question. I know we've talked a little bit about it, so I thought it was timely just to kind of wrap this in. We haven't maybe done a deep dive into it, but I've hinted at things here and there, which is the question just said, holding dogs to trial standards during hunting season. Well, for those of you that have followed along here with the podcast, I oftentimes talk about how hunting season naturally does unravel training season, at least to an extent. And I just don't think that you can, whether it's trialing or testing for that matter, I don't think that you can hold your dog to those standards while in the field very often at all. And the reason I say that is because, well, those situations, trials and testing, those are controlled situations. Hunting is not, right? Hunting is the exact opposite. It's uncontrolled. You can't control what the birds are going to do, how they're going to do it, how the shots are put on. And half the time, at least for me, depending on the situation you're hunting in, especially if you're hunting in a field with any kind of cover in it at all, you may not even know exactly where those birds are, right? You want that dog to have the natural side of things, So now, with that being said, I'm also not saying let your dog go off the rails and, completely be a renegade and say, hey, well, he's hunting. This is different. I'm not saying that at all, because we don't want to completely unwind all the training that we've done. But there just may be certain situations where you loosen the reins up a little bit. I'd look at a lot of what we're doing, in trial and test setups. It is meant to replicate hunting, right? It's meant to replicate it, but replicating and actually being the same, being the real deal are two different things. But steadiness should be an absolute priority. That doesn't change, right? Control shouldn't change. Casting shouldn't change. Running blind shouldn't change. Marking shouldn't change. But you're going to elevate. You're going to elevate all across the board. Specifically marking. We're no longer throwing, 3 ducks in a boom, boom, boom order, right? It's boom, 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 and anywhere from 12 to maybe if you hunt with my group 2 birds fall. but there might be a lot of birds that they need to pick up, a lot of marking going on. Plus, you've got live birds, that are getting up and getting out of there that they were likely still watching, and marking fly away. So it's not the same. But we need to hold them to a standard, right? And so, what I try to do, I try to hold my dogs to the highest standard that I can. I know what their capabilities are. I know what we train for, and I try not to let go of that. But I can tell you on numerous occasions, just like I talked about last episode with Bud, Bud just happened to have a number of cripple birds that would dive on him and swim all over the place, and then they'd pop up, 30, 40 yards to the right. Well, then I'd cast them over there and he'd drop, and then, that's, you can't train for that. You can't test your trial for that. But it's something that they're going to encounter. Well, that naturally is going to unravel some of the control and training that we have done when we're running just a straight blind. So, it's probably a really bad way of answering this question, but it's kind of twofold there, right? It's like, on one hand, yeah, we want to have as high of a standard as we can for our dogs while they're in the field, but on the other hand, they also can't be that kind of a standard, I don't think. Because it's just, there's no complete controlled situation like you do, in either, hunt test or field trial or training situations. So your expectations have to change. I also kind of look at, too, the sense of urgency that oftentimes, comes about. And, specifically, we see this a lot while we're goose hunting. We get a volley and we're picking up birds, and all of a sudden it's like, get on, there's more coming, get on. Well, he's down there working, or he's out there working, and I've been handling. Well, I'm also not going to look at, my, 7, 8 buddies that remember, like, they're not the dog nerds that I am. And you're probably in that same boat. Like, you're the dog nerd. Well, this is probably the one day this week that they get to go do this. I'm not going to say, sorry guys, you don't get to, work this because I still need to have a couple more casts and I need to get him back into this area. No, I'm probably recalling him, trying to get him back in the blind so we can work these birds, finish these birds, right? Well, you're not, that's not a setup either, So there's just so much that can go on that I think, again, we need to hold ourselves to as high of a standard as possible. But your expectations just have to change. They just have to. And then, again, going into training season, our expectations are going to change again. Now we're coming back into the controlled situation, but the uncontrolled situations have probably unraveled some of this a little bit. So now we kind of step back. What do we have to focus on? What do we have to, touch back up on? Okay, now let's hit the ground running and let's go, get back to where we should be. That's where we're at right now. We're at that, identifying, sharpening up, knocking the rust off, and then, because in, shoot just, probably, a month and a half or so, we're going to be back in test season, and we're going to be, traveling all over, and we're going to have, all these setups and, situations they've never seen before as far as, environment, right? So we need to be prepared for that. So it's a fun transition. Again, it's a process, right? So, kind of the ebbs and flows, we take it, we face the adversity, and, we just ride that process out. But I think it's a really cool thing to talk about because I think too often, especially with some of my friends, a lot of my friends that test or trial, like they don't hunt their dogs because they know that it's going to, mess them up for the game that they're playing. I don't mean the game as in it's a bad thing, but it is a game, right? It's, everything that we're doing activity-wise with the dogs is a game of some sort. And so if I'm playing the hunt test game, I know that going into hunting season is probably going to loosen some of that stuff up, and I just come back and retrain for it. But, I have friends of mine that are so dedicated to it that they don't want to take any steps back in their training, so they just stick with the training and they stick with testing, and they're very driven on, hey, I want 500 points, I want 1,000 points, I want whatever these landmarks and milestones are that they're shooting for. And I have my opinions, on that, and they have theirs, and I think that's what's neat about this thing is that we're all elevating. It's just at kind of some different paces and different processes. So, but I think it was a cool question, very cool question. But yeah, this was kind of a quicker episode here, as I just want to talk about that adversity piece. I think that's really a neat thing that I think if more of us take the time to appreciate and more of us take the time to look at is, hey, this is a real thing, and I want to invite this, and I want to face this head on. I want to overcome this, and look at how much better you are as a team on the other end of it. I think we'll all appreciate that process even just a little bit more. And on the flip side, or on the same token rather, I think we'll also in turn appreciate the relationship that we have with our gun dogs even that much more. So thank you all for joining me here this week, and I hope you guys have a great week. Go have a great week of training, and come back and visit me here next week, and we will hit another topic. Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Leave us a review on iTunes, and a special thank you to DUK, because without them, we couldn't do what we do here, bringing this information to you.